Hello and welcome to Beyond the Surface. I am Angela Bertone, your host. In today's podcast, we'll discuss the beauty of mourning. Early one morning while driving to work, I was watching the warm orange sunrise when I heard a voice like it was inside of me saying, "In the morning, you wake up." I candidly and kind of shockingly replied, "I know." And again, it was inside my head, not like out loud. "No," the voice persisted. "Listen again." And then I heard, "In the Mourning, you wake up." Now, back in the day, I lived in a lot of fear. And just the thought of God speaking to me in my thoughts with something that was shocking, like, "What are you talking about?" Morning, as I'm watching the morning sunrise, and I hear that that's when we wake up. I first thought it was like, why would God talk to me so profoundly and tell me something I already know? And so when I replied, "I know," which was sort of cocky, I get it. Um, I don't, other than just to say I was in shock, number one, that I was hearing what I believed to be God's voice. But number two, if God was going to speak to me so plainly, why would he tell me something I knew? And then when he corrected my hearing and said, "No, in the Mourning, you wake up," man, fear just struck my heart. My palms began to sweat. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. And I said, "Oh God, is something bad about to happen to one of my children, my husband, my family? Like, what are you telling me?" Again, I heard the voice respond, "I'm simply teaching you. This is not a warning." "Do you know how much you love your children?" was the next thing I heard. "Yes," I replied. "No, you don't. Not unless they came home to be with me. Could you understand how much you love them?" You see, in the Mourning, you wake up. "Lord, why are you telling me this? Are you preparing me for something bad?" Again, "No," was his reply. "Understand this. When you suffer, grieve, mourn, and are broken, you enter into a different level of awareness and understanding. You wake up. You're able to see. You acquire understanding. The sunrise has been telling you this truth your whole life, but you've been blind and deaf, unable to perceive it. I'm just allowing you to see and hear with my eyes and ears so that you can hear and see the truth." Now, I just have to break in here as I'm telling you my story and say this. I was fully aware of the scripture in Romans chapter 1 that says that everything that God made is revealing him and therefore revealing truth. And that it's so clearly seen that we are without excuse. We could even understand the Godhead. Well, I don't know about you, but I'd never heard nature speak before, or God speak to me through nature, explaining truths that I didn't have the ability to understand experientially yet. So let's go back to me sharing what I'm hearing with you in my thoughts. As you can imagine, tears were streaming down my face, and I continued to drive to work, crying and confused, and really still pretty fearful. I was sitting in amazement, and I thought to myself, I can never tell anyone this story. They'll think I've lost my mind. Then I went inside the office where the women and I worked together, and they saw me and saw my countenance and said, "What happened to you?" And I was like, "Why?" And they said I looked sunburned. So I ran to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror. My heart was still beating. My face was beat red. My chest was beat red. And it was like bizarre because I didn't think anybody could see on my countenance what I had experienced in the car. And just the thought of God himself teaching me kind of made me feel cuckoo. So the truth that I heard was undeniable. In the morning, you wake up. But I didn't really understand that experientially because I had really never suffered tragedy. And I'd never heard creation or God speak through creation like this. So I was like, how could I hear this and it not be God and it be so much truth? And if it's no way for me to know that, then it must be God. So again, feeling overwhelmed. I'm looking in the mirror. I'm sweaty. My face is red. My neck is red. My chest is red. And I just have tears streaming down my face. Like, what just happened to me? That day, my relationship with God completely changed. And it would never go back to the way that it was before. Now, let me just give you a little backstory. I love the Lord as far back as I can remember. I remember talking to God when I was 4 years old in the backyard, playing in the clovers. And I would presume that when there was, I could see animals in the clouds or shapes in the clouds. I was just little and I thought God was doing that to have fun with me because my mom was really good at imagination and playing and storytelling. So I just felt like God was the same way. And so I always felt really close to God. And I was born and raised Catholic, went to the Catholic Church, loved the Lord. And I went to visit other churches in town, mostly Baptist churches where I was invited to go. And I always just felt this deep connection. At age 14, I had a supernatural experience with God. And when I shared it with my mom, she was like, okay, honey, that's nice. Go to bed. So I kind of thought like that was just normal for people to have a supernatural experience. But to be quite honest, over time, I didn't have a lot of those until this year, where the sunrise was the catalyst through which God began to speak to me. My life with God changed, and I began to have supernatural experiences where I would see things in my sleep or in a vision or in what looked like a hologram. And again, I've had some of these, but I didn't talk about them much, and they were sparing. They were like once here or there or further down the road, but not back to back to back over and over and over again, where it felt like a way of life was developing. And the more this happened, the easier it became to know the difference between my own thoughts and what I now call God's voice. So again, it wasn't audible, but it was very distinctly not my thoughts. And that the way that he talked to me at times was funny. At times was I would get offended because the truth was so raw that I was like felt like God was taking sides, especially if it was in regard to me and my husband and my marriage. It just began to be a common occurrence where in my prayer life I would pray and didn't hear God while I was praying, but later on I'd be doing something like washing dishes or folding clothes or driving down the road, and this answer would come that was clearly not from my own way of thinking. So that was like the distinctive difference of how I began to know my own thoughts from God's. Because let me just give you one example. I was washing dishes one afternoon, and in my head, I was complaining to God about my husband. And my husband said to me, about my husband, and God said to me, lighten up, he's funny. Well, I didn't think that was fair, number one, for God to say, lighten up, he's funny, when I'm praying in my head, thinking God needs to help me out and fix my husband some kind of way. Like I wanted my husband to stop doing a certain thing. And rather than God convicting my husband and telling my husband what he needed to do or not do, which is what I think was God's job, God was saying to me, I needed to heal and that Michael was really pretty funny and that I was missing out. Now, in that moment, I didn't feel like that I agreed with God. But I have to tell you, many years later, 20 to be exact, God was so helping me come out of my lies and my victim mentality and bring me into truth. And I can honestly say my husband is extremely funny. And you ever heard somebody say, there's no such thing as a girl too pretty, a car too fast? Well, there's no such thing as my husband being too funny. He's just funny. He makes me laugh to the point of crying. Sometimes we laugh so much that it hurts. Like you just like, stop, or you feel weak because when you're not living life out of your past experiences that are painful and victim minded, you really can enjoy life a whole lot better. So let me begin my wrap up as to why I'm sharing with you about the sunrise telling me in the morning that it's in the Mourning, we wake up, is because truly the whole earth is speaking. And it's kind of mind boggling how plainly it's talking, and yet how much I couldn't hear God. And most people tell me the same thing. They actually ask me, how do you hear God so well? Well, it was a process of learning, and it was so intense and so often that at times I really didn't even want to talk about it because it seemed so unreal. So what God began to show me was that not only was the whole earth speaking, but that I in fact was blind, and that if I would just say I couldn't see, none of it would be held against me. But because I think I could see, all my judgments and my perspective is actually held against me. And God, when I asked him, like, well, I thought I was, once I was lost and, and now I'm found. Once I was blind, but now I could see, kind of like the song Amazing Grace. But what he showed me was in the scripture where Isaiah prophesied that seeing we would not see and hearing we would not hear. And when Jesus came into the earth, he in fact told the people right in front of him, he said, truly a great light has come into the darkness, and the darkness has perceived it not. Oh, Isaiah, you did prophesy well. Now I didn't quote a scripture, that's just from my memory, so give me grace if I didn't quote exactly right. But the point being is the light of the world was right there standing in front of men and women. And Jesus was like in awe of how accurate that Isaiah's prophecy came to pass, that the light in the dark was not even visible to the people when the light was right in front of them. And God was showing me that I was struggling from the same thing. And he even said, like, if the sunrise is the brightest light that you know of, and you couldn't hear what it was telling you, what else is the earth telling you that you cannot hear? And I thought, that's pretty profound, because it's even the same word, morning. It's spelled different, but it doesn't actually mean something different, because in scripture, when God talked about fasting, if you actually go do a study on it, you'll find that fasting and the word grieving is the same word. So it's sort of like this. When someone has a loss, like the death of a child or a divorce, their body goes into a natural response of not being hungry. And so we actually help people when they're struggling in grief to that degree. Here, drink a bowl of, a broth, or eat this bowl of soup. You got to get strength in your body, because the natural response to grieving is to not eat. And so we, in the morning, break the fast with what we call breakfast. And the first drink of the day that most of us have is coffee, and it's a dark, bitter drink that wakes us up. And so I began to ask people who had experienced very deep tragedy this question. When you lost that individual, did you wake up to how deep you loved them? And was your love for them different, or were you just more aware? And they all of them, whether it was the death of a child, death of a spouse, suicide, car wreck, injury, sickness, it didn't matter. All of them agreed, yeah, you sure wake up. And so that was this story that I'm sharing with you, is the beginnings of me sharing with you how the earth is constantly revealing to us truth, and that we really can't see and hear it unless God reveals it. Now, I will put a little plug in right here for my book. I wrote a book called Good Morning Sunshine. And some of this morning's podcast, I actually read a few bits and pieces here or there, but I really told you more of the story than I did read, because I just really like sometimes closing my eyes and just talking, like from my heart to yours. But For the sake of accuracy, some of it I read a little bit, and you could probably tell that in my dissertation. But what I want to introduce you to is if this interests you and you were like, wow, is pretty amazing. We do wake up in the morning and we do call it breaking the fast, which means a break of the morning, a relief, if you will, and waking up to truth. This book reveals to you the purpose or some of the purposes of why we come to earth and we go through sorrow and suffering. And there are hidden treasures in our sorrow and suffering. And if you listen to my podcast often, you'll learn that I talk a lot about the fight or flight, which is our human nature, which is part of what we call the human condition. And I really believe that I've discovered a way to help you not live out of your fight or flight, but how you can become aware of it. And because you are aware, you can turn from the knowledge of good and evil that is woven into your fight or flight, and you can turn to where God is in the kingdom of heaven, which is inside of you. And you don't have to be trapped in the fight or flight, anxiety, stress cycles. You can be free. And you don't have to live addicted to fear and the need to be rescued over and over again so that you can feel loved. Because truly, there is no such thing as being alone. And there's no such thing as not being loved, for we've always been loved. We've always been accepted. And God is always ever present right now. Thank you so much for listening, joining me on Beyond the Surface. Thank you for subscribing and sharing it with others. I'm Angela Bertone, your host. May this be a reminder to walk in love today and every day.